Welcome to Gradcast, the official podcast of the Society of Graduate Students at the University of Western Ontario. Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome to another exciting episode of Gradcast, the official podcast of the Society of Graduate Students at the University of Western Ontario. I am Tristan. I'm here today with Ramina Adam.
Hello, everyone.
And we have an excellent guest today. We're from the Hispanic literature area. He's doing a PhD. He's a very involved person. I believe you also work in PSAC, and you are...
I call it PCAC. Sounds better than PSAC, yeah.
His name is Jaime Brenes Reyes, and...
Very good, yeah.
Lovely.
Welcome to Gradcast.
Thank you.
We tried to have you on a bit earlier, but, complications got in the way, but welcome, you made it. How are you?
Finally. I'm okay, it's end of March, so it's a bit busy. Some exams on SSC grade. Mm-hmm. But I think, that's the same for everyone.
Celebrating with a beer at grad club?
Well, right now, no one gave me a beer, so,
Oh.
we can wait for later.
After grad club.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I'm very professional in that regard.
All right.
So, Jaime, tell us a little bit about what you're doing. What you do in these hallowed halls.
Well, I enjoy reading. I think reading good literature can be sometimes a bit therapeutic somehow, and also very engaging in a way that takes me out of my or push my limits of what I understand by reality. So when I read a good text, I know that it's good because at the end I'm like, what the hell do I just read? What do I make out of this? So when I don't know what something meant in the text, is when it gives me the signal that I actually read something good. That's what I try to do.
So you're like trying to catch that. Like, I mean, it's not just like in literature, but like lots of ththings where like you get a really good story or something like that, and afterwards you just have that feeling like how does my life even continue after this? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and not that I want to end my life, but how do I see my life after reading this particularly very excellent piece of literature, or how that may change what I have already experienced before reading it.
So that's a really interesting thing to because like the qualia, like there's not really a word for the emotion, right?
There might be. That emotion, the way that I put it in my research, I call it a seizure.
Seizure?
A seizure, yeah. So seizure, in the English language can mean many things. It can be an assault, it can be a possession, it can be a kidnapping, it can be some kind of interruption. So I see that emotion, if you want to call it an emotional thing, or even an affect, in which there is something that happens in between, almost like an earthquake. I don't know if you have ever been or felt an earthquake, but there's that moment that that they might, that according to the clock might last 1 second, but then according to your own emotions or the way that you feel it, it might last a century if you really get into it.
So you're taking the word seizure out of like the typical scientific aspect of it, which is like that increase in neural activity, abnormal neural activity, and you're kind of redefining it in like a kind of in terms of literature, right?
Exactly, yeah. So in the humanities right now, there is a field emerging which some people call health humanities.
Okay.
So there are some physicians that are trying to engage with literature and explaining the works of, let's say, famous authors like Dostoevsky. And they try to explain it by using, we know, well, for example, we know that Dostoevsky was epileptic. Right. So some physicians go and read these books and try to explain it, being like, oh, okay, so Dostoevsky was epileptic, so he was writing this way. I recognize and I acknowledge that reading, but I take some things out of science and use them rather as metaphors for my own reading. So what I want is not exactly to explain a good text, because I think that when you want to explain a good text, then it's not as interesting. The question or the doubt, the seizure moment has to remain there. So I use it as more of a metaphor method, let's say, in which and then from that point to bring questions back to science. not to bring science into literature to explain it, but try to raise questions to may pose some kind of challenge or some kind of debate with scientists.
Very interesting. So Dostoevsky, he's for those of you who don't know, a Russian author. He's author of Crime and Punishment, The Idiot. So he had epilepsy, as you said.
Yeah.
And so I guess, is he like a common person that these people who are doing health humanities research, that they really look into?
Well, he's one of the main ones, I would say,
Right.
because he's very well recognized in literature. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're looking into, who's the author that you're currently looking into?
Mainly Julio Cortázar.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit about him?
Julio Cortázar, he was born in Belgium in 1914, just at the beginning of the First World War. Then he grew up a couple of years in France, then in Spain. Then he moved with his family to Argentina, and then he studied to just to be a teacher in primary or high school. He was doing some writing in his 30s and 40s, but he was a bit of a shy person. He was extremely tall. He was almost like 2 meters tall. You see a picture of this guy. It was like, oh my God! Look, you see the big difference, in the pictures. But then by the end of the 50s, almost like the middle of the 50s actually, he decided to move to France. And he lived the rest of his life in France. The political situation in Argentina at the time was a bit difficult. There was some dictatorship. Then later on in the 70s, there was a military dictatorship. There was a coup. But then even in his own words, he felt more of a Latin American in France rather than Argentina. And he wrote a very famous novel in Latin American literature. It's translated into English as Hopscotch, but he was mainly a short story writer.
Okay. And what got you interested in, like, what exactly are you doing with his literature? What are you looking at?
Well, his literature, his short stories. There's always a point in which I feel that what just happened here, because there are these moments in which you don't know exactly who is talking, who is doing the narration, or what the setting might be. Things change very, very quickly. Very how you say it? Like you don't even realize that there is a change. Very smoothly. Right. Yeah. Sorry, English is my second language. I was about to talk in Spanish, in español.
Translated.
But then when it was diagnosed with a seizure disorder, I came across this very interesting essay that he wrote. More of an essay, it was a reflection of how he writes, or he comes to write a short story. So he explains that, he used to be a translator for the UNESCO in Paris. So he'll be like, maybe I'm translating something from French into Spanish, but then I feel this thing, coming into my mind, taking over me, some kind of possession, that he felt the idea coming upon him. And then he will have to stop doing whatever he was doing and just sit down with his typewriter and tap out the story. So then, because of my seizure disorder has much to do with language, I felt some kind of connection. That moment in which I have to stop whatever I'm doing. And again, this is something that goes back to Dostoevsky. That's why he's very interesting. That as someone with a seizure, anyone with a seizure will tell you, it's not something that we want to have one. We avoid having one. That's why we take medication, first of all. But at the same time, there is something to gain in a very strange way out of that. That being taken away from reality for a second might, give you some momentum, or almost, into looking at the world in a different way. So when I read this reflection by Cortázar and how he comes to write the story, because he feels this thing coming upon him, and then he has to sit down and write, and he goes as far as to call these ideas almost like demons. That when he writes a good short story, he's doing exorcism.
Wow.
Because what the interesting thing is that he's trying to kill that emotion by giving life to a story.
Beautiful.
That's the way I try to see my research. That we are all graduate students. We know that it's not easy to do research, but then there is some kind of passion by which we know we want to do it. But the only way to finish it is to actually do it. So there is some kind of something pushing you towards those limits. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what got me interested in Cortázar. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's really interesting. What's really interesting about that is both your author, you're talking about how it felt like almost as if creativity or the inspiration for the story came from without, and that's actually a really common thing. Like if you look back at like things like the muses, like the concept, and like the creativity comes from them. So how does this idea of like the seizure, as in like, or the seizure as in like being like your life feeling interrupted by just being taken away by an amazing story that you've read, as opposed to like this idea of the story coming to you and you have to write it? Like, how do you reconcile those two states?
Well, as I say, I try to bring, I try to do my neuroscience readings. I might be misinformed, but I try to do as much as I can. Seizures, at least, there are many types of seizures. In my case, they happen. So, a neuroscientist, Ramina?
Yeah, I'm a graduate student. I would love to call myself a neuroscientist, but not just yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there is the theta waves, right?
Yeah.
So that's where my seizures happen. Mm-hmm. So theta waves is daydreaming.
Right.
So daydreaming, do you decide when to daydream? I will say no, especially when reading a text. If you get really engaged with the text, there is this certain point in which you lose that grasp of the way that we perceive the world normally. So that may alter even the function of the brain. So in writing and reading, there is a generation of that daydreaming state, which is also what the neuroscientists see as the primary role of these theta waves. Not only of daydreaming, they happen when you have dreams, but also it's a focus of creativity.
It's amazing. Like, there's always so many thoughts that creativity is something you work hard and work at, but it's actually like the idea that sometimes it just comes.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. So another thing that's really cool about your work is that there's like, you're always in the humanities participating in a conversation.
We try, yeah.
Every book is responding to books and is trying to say something, responding. And so, like, is there other people working in this idea of seizure, or is this like your baby?
There are some people. I have convinced them into. No, I should not take credit for it. No, it has come from many sources. But I would like to see it as the thing that I'm bringing into the field. Especially, as I mentioned before, health humanities. But the focus of at least literary theory in terms of, let's say, neuroscience or health humanities have been English literature, mostly American, and in some cases of Dostoevsky. Mm-hmm. So, but in terms of Latin American, there's Latin American literature, nothing I've seen.
So you're really going to be a pioneer.
I hope, yeah.
That's very good.
So what would you say that the implications of your research would be then?
That's a good question.
What can it tell you?
Yeah. The implications are, I would like to...
Do you think it's like a way to kind of bring like a human side to, people with epilepsy? It's like taking you away from just calling it like a neurological disorder or something. You're kind of you're looking at it from a different from a different angle. Like, you know, it has its benefits, and it can really get you super engaged into reading this awesome literature in like a different way. And so
that was the angle that it was taking me sometimes. That's exactly what I tried to do. So the implication I will say is that my experience with the healthcare in North America has been, well, it could be much better. Mm-hmm. The way that healthcare is perceived in North America is that it is there for the treatment of people with illnesses, and I don't think that's exactly what healthcare should be. Healthcare should be there for the betterment of well people, not only of people with some kind of disability or some kind of illnesses or some kind of something. Healthcare should be there for everyone, for the benefit of everyone. Even if you don't have some kind of seizure disorder, you can get much from the reading about other people's narrative or perception about it. So when we talk about health or healing or whatever we want to call it, it's not just to treat, and who's the next person in the line, for me to see an appointment today as a doctor. It should be for everyone.
Very interesting.
So where does the connection come then between seizure as like this new definition for this experiential mm-hmm. moment, and seizure as in the medical when the firings, the shaking and the on the floor thing, I mean, they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but I'm just wondering, where do you see that connection between seizure as experiential mm-hmm. Event and seizure as medical episode?
Yeah, I see it as the moment, the moment in which you are in between. So a seizure doesn't really have to be some kind of a tonic-clonic, in which that you lose control of your body. There can be many types of seizures. You might be having one and you have no idea, or I might be having one and you have no idea. And someone just before the show was mentioning a conference that we recently did in my department that we call the trance and trance. So being in that trance state can also be a seizure. So it doesn't have to have let's say a bad meaning. It could be bringing oneself in connection with other people. So when you are dancing, when you are so intensely dancing as in a rave, or so intensely meditating as in yoga, well, why don't we call that a seizure too? Because there is an interruption. There is an alteration of the way that we're perceiving reality. So I think this is a word that have a lot of potential to bring something new into people's life.
Well, thanks. I think so. That sounds like you're adding to the lexicon right there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really interesting way to think about seizures, just completely redefining it. And I think that's very interesting. How would you say? So, do you think that the way when you read literature, have you ever talked about reading the same work and then talked about with someone who doesn't experience mm-hmm. seizures, and you've seen a difference in the way that you guys perceive that literature?
Oh, definitely, yeah. But I don't see debate or the exchange of ideas of different perspectives as something bad.
Yeah.
I think it's very beneficial, to hear the different perspectives.
Do you think you experience it on a kind of a higher level in comparison to other people?
Yeah, perhaps. And that's also a good question, because I don't want my thesis to be about myself or about my experience.
Yeah.
I try to take my ego outside of it and bring it in connection to other people.
Right.
I think it will be a very big mistake of my part if if writing is only my interpretation of these particular texts, because then there is no interruption.
Right.
I will be just building my own ego out of my interpretation.
It would be an autobiography.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it is hard because I do feel the connection, but at the same time, it is a seizure in the double sense. And even for me, it's trying to step away from myself.
by I Can Read Things Better Than You by Jaime Brenes Reyes. Thank you so much for coming.
No, thanks to you. Yes.
That was
Great,
amazing.
thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for this week. If you want to send us some feedback, or if you want to come on the show yourself, email us at gradcastradio@gmail.com. Be sure to hook us up on social media. On Twitter, we're at GradcastRadio, and look up Gradcast Radio also on Facebook. If you want to subscribe to the podcast is located at gradcast.podbean.com, and it's on iTunes. And while you're there, why don't you leave us a review? It really helps us out. We'll see you guys next week.